Gators Breakdown episode 56 is ready to go, where we'll look at Florida's interest in Malik Zaire, and we'll also preview the Orange and Blue debut while looking at what players we think need a good showing and areas of the team we're looking forward to seeing on Friday night. I am your host, David Waters, here on Gators Breakdown. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SDC. And joining me again tonight, the duo of the co-hosts Joey Vizzi and Bill Sykes. You can find Joey on Twitter at JoeyV_SEC Sports and Bill on Twitter at RealB Sykes. Guys, thanks for joining me. I think we got a good show coming up on this one.
Yeah, I think so too, man. Got a couple of good different types of things, but I think they're both gonna be interesting.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it.
There we go. Reminder, before we start this show, you can find all your Gators Breakdown episodes of the past on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. Just search on those sites. And you can follow us on Twitter at Gators Breakdown and Facebook as well. Just search Gators Breakdown. Also, please share the show if you like it. Leave a review and rate on iTunes. So we kind of discussed it last week with the chances Florida being a landing spot for Notre Dame grad transfer quarterback Malik Zaire. Then today, this would be on a Monday, a report came out from 247gatorbait.net. Thomas Goldkamp, who we've had on the show before, he reports that sources say there's mutual interest between Florida and Zaire. So I know, guys, we kind of hit this last week, and I guess, maybe we had a little foreshadowing. But hopefully we won't repeat ourselves too much. But we'll dive kind of deeper into Zaire a bit more. Now, he played in 17 games in his career at Notre Dame, going 58 for 98 for that's 59.2%. Percentage for his passes, 816 yards, 6 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Also rushed for 324 yards and 2 touchdowns on 72 carries. He was named the MVP of the Music City Bowl in 2014 with a win over LSU, and that was his first career start. Split a time with Everett Golson. Zaire in that game rushed 22 times for 96 yards and was 12 of 15 for 96 yards passing. Threw for a touchdown, ran for another. Then opened the 2015 season as a starter, suffered a broken ankle in the second game, lost his job to Deshaun Kaiser before deciding to transfer last fall. So we talked about this possibility last week, how we felt about it, but of course we have more this week. But Joey, I'll start with you. You were kind of told some information and kind of going along with what we heard today, and maybe you've heard why Zaire would be looking at Florida.
Well, the coaches actually were intrigued by him back in January. I don't know if you remember, back in January, his name came up as a hot name. That's obviously before we knew that Franks was kind of leading the way, which we're hearing reports now. But from what I'm being told is the coaches aren't really even confident in either of the freshmen right now. We're hearing that Franks has pulled away in this competition. It's kind of separated himself, which we kind of expected, but there's whispers that the coaches really aren't sold on either guy right now, and that's not saying that either guy's, bust or never going to make it. I mean, let's think about this. Kyle Trask didn't start for his high school team, so we can't really call him a bust or lose that never really was there. We kind of made something out of nothing. I mean, we turned him into the unicorn, he basically like somebody that we were searching for because we heard good things last spring about his arm. Obviously Felipe Franks obviously was the big gun, the big arm, the 4-star out of the Panhandle. And, and we kind of labeled him as the heir apparent to Luke Del Rio, and had hoped once Luke Del Rio went down that he was going to be the guy going into fall camp. But apparently the coaches, don't really see it that way. Not to say, like I said, that either guy is, bad or, but it's a really tough schedule next year. Florida got very lucky with a very easy schedule this past season. Florida has to face Michigan in the opening game of the season. I mean, that's no easy task. Obviously, I don't expect Michigan to be as good as they've been the last 2 years, but they're still going to probably be a top 5, top 6 preseason team. So who do you want going out there? Do you want possibly to make his first start against a Big Ten Michigan team that possibly could win the Big Ten this year? Or would you trust a guy maybe like Malik Zaire, who has, started many games at a high level program? Also, Malik Zaire, his junior year was pretty sensational. I think he completed 63% of his passes. He had a 187 rating that year, had 0 interceptions. That was the year where everybody had high hopes for his senior year. And then obviously the benching happened and the whole Deshaun Kaiser, back and forth happened. But, Malik Zaire, was a really highly rated recruit. I believe he was a 5-star, Bill, right?
Malik Zaire was a 4-star. I believe he was the number 4 dual threat quarterback. Yeah, the composite 4-star. He may have been a 5-star on individual service, though.
I do know he was very highly coveted, though, coming out of high school.
Yeah, I've actually got
his big land by Kelly.
I've got his profile right here. He was when you look at the composite, which factors all the different services in, he was the number 170 recruit overall, which is a high-rated recruit. The number 4 dual threat quarterback in the country, a 92 grade. A lot of his schools that he had listed included Alabama, Nebraska, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Oregon. Some of the big players were involved there.
Yeah, so my point is he was no scrub, So let's not, think of him as an Austin Appleby. He's not Austin Appleby. He's better than Austin Appleby. I mean, he was a highly rated recruit for a reason. He had success at Notre Dame for a reason. He's a lefty, so the ball's going to become spinning out of his arm, a different way. So the receivers would obviously have to adjust to that. But, I could see, like Bill, we had discussed on Twitter earlier through direct message, I could see both sides. I know a lot of fans right now are not too happy with the news of Malik Zaire, being entertained by Jim McElwain. But put it this way, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second. You're going against Michigan. You have 19-year-old Felipe Franks, who, as of right now, would you trust a Malik Zaire that has experience? He obviously doesn't know the playbook like Felipe Franks does, but I would trust him in a big game situation to go to Jerry World and beat Michigan with the offensive weapons that Florida has this year, over a guy like Felipe Franks. That's not saying that Zaire, is going to be the answer this year, but I could understand the appeal that the coaches have because he offers security, Bill, that either of the freshmen right now, from what I'm hearing, aren't really giving the coaches. I mean, Franks has made strides. We've heard that. We've been told that by several outlets and people that are around the program. But that's not to say that those strides are competent enough to play quarterback at a high level in the Southeastern Conference, Bill. So we got to take it, obviously we had discussed many times. We talked about it last week. Spring practice is scripted. The coaches let out what they want to let out. The spring game is scripted. The coaches let you see what they want you to see. So we're only hearing, what they want the public to hear. So if they're trying to, blow sunshine and rainbows to the public about Felipe Franks and how he looks, that may not be really how it is right now, and what I'm told is he has made leaps and bounds in how he has progressed, but he still is having trouble reading defenses. He's having trouble throwing the short routes, the intermediate routes, throws a beautiful deep ball. But there's still question marks, Bill. There's question marks as to whether Del Rio's even going to be ready to play come fall camp. There's question marks as to whether Felipe Franks is going to live up to the billing. And obviously Kyle Trask is just not the guy. I hate to let people down that were on the Trask bandwagon this past season, but he's a backup. I think he was a backup all the way. And I just think that Malik Zaire playing devil's advocate, although I don't like it and it kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth the way it does probably most people out there that I've seen on Twitter, it is a reasonable argument why to bring him in.
Bill, before I get to you, I'll throw the poll up there so that we can kind of extend what Joey brought up. So I threw the poll up. Would you be okay with the Gators bringing in quarterback Malik Zaire? And I asked why, but the results were out of 300 votes, 56% voted yes, they would be okay, 44% no. So, it is, there's a good majority good majority saying yes, but it is, kind of split. Now, not 50-50, but there is a good percentage both ways. Of course, you look at both, you need to develop Franks or Trask, more than likely Franks, like Joey was saying. That's kind of the route people want to go. They want to see these young quarterbacks develop. They want to see these young guys get the experience. If you look at the other way, and Bill, you brought this up last week, was you can't have too many arms. A good coach never settles for what he has on his depth chart. Always looking for ways to improve. So with the poll and what people are throwing out there, Bill, how do you see this playing out? Maybe, and how do you want to see it play out when Malik Zaire is in the Gator uniform?
Man, there's so much to say here. First of all, we need to make sure we throw this out there. Even if Zaire wants to come, even if he's been offered by McElwain, he can't yet because of the grad transfer probation situation with Florida, where they didn't have a couple of graduations that they expected to from such grad transfers, these fifth-year guys. So this may not be permitted by the SEC, and it's pending an appeal on that rule. Florida is hoping that this rule that's hanging things up gets overturned and that they are allowed to bring him in. But let's say that they are. First of all, I think it should be said that, kind of like what Joey was saying with Trask and without Franks, even if this turns out to be the case with those guys, that they're not ready yet, the most important word there is yet. It is the operative word.
Yes.
It is not an indictment on them in the long term. And I can understand fully why advocates of this move and advocates of people that just want somebody else to come in and compete for the job right away would say, hey, these kids are still just second-year players. And sometimes good quarterbacks take a while to develop, especially a guy like Trask. Maybe Trask is, the next Joe Montana. I mean, who knows? And I'm certainly not suggesting that he is. We just don't know yet. But it's just too early to tell. With that said, there's two sides to this. And the positive, you still got a relatively good core on defense coming back. You've got an emerging, hopefully, offense. You've got some good talent on the perimeter at wide receiver. You've got a couple of good running backs, a young offensive line that looks like they're ready to start doing some things. I can understand why Jim McElwain would say, hey, maybe we do look for that one move that puts us over the top, and maybe we can kick the door down in Alabama and beat the odds this year with that right player behind center. And maybe that guy's not on the roster, but they see him in Zaire. He is a veteran. He's an upperclassman. He's a dynamic athlete that's going to add a new dimension to their offensive attack that it's going to help you win the numbers game. It's going to force those guys in the SEC to account not only for Tyree Cleveland, not only for Callaway, not only for Scarlett, but now suddenly they have to count for his legs. I can understand that. On the flip side of that, this is a guy that we're talking about showing up in June. And if this individual if he can come in and win that job, then you're talking about a guy that comes over and beats your quarterbacks within a month or two. That's not a ringing endorsement of the guys on the roster. And when you talk about Franks being the guy that is the guy that has the presence, the guy that has the command of the team, then you're talking about undermining that. You're saying, hey, you have such this command and this presence, but yet we're going to bring in this other guy and we're going to send this message to not only the fans, but the team that you're not it. If that's his strength, you're going to negate that. And that could shake his long-term confidence.
It could, Bill, but if he's a guy that you want to lead your team, it's not going to shake his confidence, Bill. It's not, because I want somebody that is always going to be competing for their job. That's who I want starting at quarterback.
Yeah, there's more to it than this, though. You're also talking about, you mentioned that he's a left-handed guy. He's also a pistol/shotgun read option type quarterback. You're talking about bringing in a guy in June, and you want to convert your offense to that in a couple of months after you've spent this whole spring. You spent 2 years now developing this offense around the idea of having a big pocket passer, having this traditional Alabama-esque attack. I know he mixes wrinkles. I know there's elements of the spread in there, and there's,
with Will Greer, there was a lot of pistol with Will Greer.
There was a lot of pistol, but there was never that aspect. And we saw images of that with Appleby last year, but there were never a threat to take off and actually make that read and run. It's still a whole new offense for your guys. It's a whole new everything. This is a different type of quarterback, a different type of attack. And so are you really going to bring in a guy like that and just flip everything over? Here, hey, guys, here's your new leader. He got here 2 months ago. We're going to start running almost exclusively pistol and shotgun. You're talking about cutting out swaths of the playbook. I know, though, it was an element of the offense last year. It's just totally different. And I'm not saying that's bad. Maybe that is the way to go. Maybe that's the new direction that reinvigorates Florida football.
Bill, who's to say that the coaches haven't already sent Malik Zaire the playbook, Bill?
But that's so what? I mean, having a playbook and having your guys take snaps for 2 years with that guy and get to know him in the huddle, to get to know his tendencies, the way he throws the ball.
I get what you're saying.
I mean, it's kind of hard for me to accept that somebody's going to waltz in and lead them to the promised land. And we're just talking about a completely different guy. And that concerns me. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad move. Like I said last week, I think it's a move you have to make if you feel your guys aren't ready. And it could be a move that puts Florida back in the mix to be a championship program. It's the right thing to do if you know it's the right thing to do as a coach. But this brings that question back to the forefront. Can Jim McElwain develop a quarterback? And now we're kicking that can down the road if this happens, and we won't have that answer for at least another year. And while that may be an unfair question, it's a question that remains over his heads from a large percentage of the fan base, like it or not. And that's what I don't like about it.
I guess,
but maybe that's the right move.
Yeah, and another thing about that, what are the chances he comes here and he's not starting?
Can you imagine this guy coming in and the pie?
You know,
yeah, I mean,
of course there's a chance.
Yeah, and that's been a big conversation point on Twitter that I've had with some followers here. It's like, oh yeah, he's another arm. There's nothing lost in bringing another arm. And a lot of people want to kind of hint at, okay, maybe he would be a backup to Franks, but
okay, then Franks, has no excuse, David. If Franks wants to win the job, if he comes in, Franks has the upper hand. So guess what? Go out and beat him and prove that you're better than him. And if you're not, then you know what, David? I'm completely okay with Zaire starting over Franks. How about that?
I think. But wait a minute. I think everybody is. If that's the case, if he's the best quarterback, I don't think there's anybody out there that would say, I don't want him on there if he's not the best guy. I don't think you have to win now.
We were told stories, bedtime stories, all off season. We were told stories by the coaching staff for 12 months now that Franks was the guy. Franks was the high profile recruit, and it could have been a figment of our imagination, Bill. I mean, it could have been Franks. There's a chance Franks never really develops in anything, Bill. I mean, it happens. It happens. Guys get recruited that are highly touted recruits that never see the field. They just don't. They don't get it. We've heard the praise about Frank's leadership and that he's really taken command of the offense. The guys love him. The locker room loves him. But we also heard that he's just not getting it. I heard he's just not getting it. He's struggling to make the right decisions. And Bill, we all know that in McElwain's offense, you have to make the right decisions, because if you don't, what has been a staple of McElwain's offense for the last 10 years, a quarterback that's safe and effective with the football. Guys like McElroy, McCarron, these guys were safe and effective with the football. And if you got a quarterback that you're worried that's going to turn it over all the time because he's going to make bad choices or he's going to get, the jitters inside the pocket, then I don't want a guy starting like that, Bill. I don't.
Hey,
then why was he so high on Del Rio?
Right, here's the problem I got with it. It's not, like I said, I have nothing against Zaire. The problem I have with is what does this say about Jim McElwain? We're in year 3, and everybody, we have been fed that narrative, kind of like you said, the bedtime story. Jim McElwain is a quarterback whisperer. He can win with his dog at quarterback. Look what he did with this guy. Look what he did with that guy. And as we've mentioned, he has yet to actually have brought a guy in.
He has one with scrap. Bill. We've talked about this.
Yeah, he's beaten Ole Miss.
He's won games, Bill. He's went to the SEC championship game with junk parts behind center.
He's beaten 3 ranked opponents.
Has he won games that he was supposed to win?
Yes. Has he won games he wasn't?
LSU.
Yes, he has.
LSU was first year.
LSU
last year. Yeah. Ole Miss is
Yeah,
freshman.
he wasn't supposed to beat LSU. Everybody in the
guess.
nation picked against Florida in that game.
Okay, he beat LSU with a lame duck coach. Or I'm sorry, interim head
Not a
coach.
lame
I mean,
coach.
But I mean,
It was
I would
the head
defend him
coach.
there on the LSU game. Everybody was picking LSU, and LSU played well, really well before that, and really well after that.
no, they were good, man. It was a great win, and he's beaten Georgia. But I'm just saying, let's not pretend that he's setting the world on fire against quality opponents. Most of his wins are games that he should win. The record against opponents that are ranked is not good at all. And let's not get down too far that road. Yeah. I'm just saying we've been told we've been fed the narrative. All programs, when they hire coaches, they cast a story. They cast it not only to the fans but to recruits, and they build this imagery. Like Butch Jones tried to do it with his brick by brick, but everybody has it. Everybody has their own thing. With Urban Meyer, it was the 1% of 1% and the fastest team in America, and they build on that. What it is at Florida was kind of the new Alabama, the pro-style offense, reinvigorating the offense. Well, we
made Florida the new Alabama. We did that. We're responsible for that, Bill. McElwain never came in and said, we're the new Alabama. We're going to be on top. We did that, Bill. We did that.
But when he was hired, it was pointed to what he did at Alabama as a coordinator, what he did at Colorado State as a head coach. Like it or not, he set the template of his own future with his past success. Jeremy Foley went to him and said, this is what I want you to do at my school. But that quarterback success is not happening. And so now we're looking and saying, okay, does it project to happen with who he's got in here? And like I said, it could still happen with Franks. It could still happen with Trask. But the guys he's brought in, now suddenly we're finding ourselves with his top-rated recruit, and you're saying, as his defender, saying, well, he just doesn't get it. Well, Jim McElwain identified that guy and recruited that guy. He went out and got Del Rio. He went out and got Appleby. He went out and got Jake Allen. He went out and got Tony. Who is the guy? Here in year 3, we're talking about have to bring in somebody else's cast-off again. That's a problem, and I understand why people have a problem.
Tony wasn't recruited as a QB, Bill. He just played QB to kind of fill a void in the spring since Del Rio was out. Tony was signed as an athlete, so we don't need to really bring Tony up in that quarterback conversation.
I get that. He's going to be an awesome slot receiver. He was brought in, and he is taking a few snaps at quarterback. And I would agree that's a wash. But if you look at the other guys, we're talking about a guy who never started a game. We're talking about one consensus 4-star recruit, a guy that was on his 3rd school, and a guy that would transfer from Purdue or whatever. Who's going to be the guy? Where is that guy to be who McElwain has had in the past? Because we're sitting here saying, well, we need another grad transfer.
Yeah, I mean,
who are we? Who are we, Bill? We don't need answers. I mean, we need an answer by the first game. What does it matter? It's April 3rd today, Bill. We don't need an answer right now.
No, you're right. But I'm presenting the side of those who are questioning the move. And like I said, I do see upside here, and it could lead to a national championship. But what I'm telling you is there is a logical, understandable, coherent reason why people would have a problem with this. Is they looking down the road at what's happening with Florida football, and they say, okay, this was about undoing the Muschamp era. This era was about putting Florida football back in play, putting some fun back in the gun, putting the ball back in the air, completing forward passes. And now we're talking about bringing in a read option quarterback to install it in McElwain's pro-style system.
Yeah, I mean, with this, I'm saying may the best quarterback win.
Me too.
But I'm not confident in the offense, and we were talking about this when we were private messaging each other. I'm not confident in the offense if Zaire walks in here this summer and becomes a starter in that short amount of time. I wouldn't feel as optimistic.
No, you're not confident in the quarterback position because the offense is good.
Well, there you go. Yes, but I think if we know this offense wants to take the next step, the big step that we want to see this offense take, the quarterback has to be there. I mean, I wouldn't feel as optimistic as I would if Franks was a starter. And I mean, hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense is what I'm trying to say there. If Franks is a starter, I'm much more optimistic because if Kaiser comes and Franks is a starter, I'm looking at, okay, well, he's beating that guy and he's, going, and McElwain feels enough confidence in him to go to Dallas against Michigan and give Franks his first start. That makes me feel optimistic in Felipe Franks if that's what Jim McElwain does.
Yeah, and in fact, hey, listen, if Zaire comes in and Franks wins the job and you've got Zaire sitting on the bench as a change of pace guy, I like that. I like that a lot. I mean, if you're going to add a 1-year stopgap of depth to back up Franks maybe put him in there in a few key situations to keep offenses off balance, I'm all for it. And I'm a happy man. And hey, like I said, maybe this works out. But you have to kind of question, okay, what's going on there if he comes in and just takes the starting job away from the guy?
Reading through the tea leaves from what I was told and what I went into earlier, Bill and David, is that the coaches believe that this offense is ready to be taken to the next level. And I don't think they believe that either one of these quarterbacks can take this offense to the next level. And, whether it's an indictment on McElwain's recruiting ability, his coaching of quarterbacks, at least he is able to recognize that he's one player away from a national championship run. And Bill, I know you criticize the offense and such, but the SEC East, whether it was a garbage SEC East or not, he did it 2 years in a row with with pretty bad players on offense. I mean, let's just be honest, really bad players on offense, not just at the quarterback position, but all the way across the board. I mean, Antonio Callaway's really been the only bright spot the last 2 seasons on this offense. The tight end position has been pretty much absent at the University of Florida since Aaron Hernandez was here. I mean, it has. The offensive line, obviously, we know, Bill, we talked about that recently, was terrible the last several years. The wide receiver position has been a one-man show the last 2 years. Tyree Cleveland's finally coming up into his own, but the running back position up until this year was subpar, to say the least. So let's give McElwain his credit where credit's due. And you know what? I'm going to trust him. It's his 3rd year. If he wants to bring Malik Zaire in and think that he's the missing piece to a national championship run, Bill, then I'm going to be all in, because you know what? He knows this is his grading year. And if he fails this year, Bill, you know that I'm going to be on that board that's going to be like, McElwain, you got to go. I'm sorry, you got to go. So this year, if he really believes that Malik Zaire is that missing link to the offense, let's not forget, Bill and David, Malik Zaire lost his job to a broken leg, okay? It wasn't his fault. He broke his leg 2 years ago and lost his job to Deshaun Kaiser, who's probably going to be a late first-round draft pick this year, early second-round draft pick. And Deshaun Kaiser, not this past year, but the year before, played out of his mind for that half a season when Zaire went down. So, Brian Kelly, as much a terrible human being and coach I think he is, he really didn't have a choice to start.
He slammed Kaiser today, by the way.
So you like Brian Kelly? Is that what you're saying?
I can't stand him. He murdered a kid, at his school and got away with it. So anyway, wasn't even responsible for manslaughter, but that's a different story, different topic, different day. He's a piece of work, but he had to start Deshaun Kaiser against Texas this year. And obviously Malik Zaire rotated in, and that messed with both of their confidences, Bill. Malik Zaire was a starter, set to be the guy. And there was many that believed he could win the Heisman last year. And then he broke his leg. So, let's not be coming in. This isn't Luke Del Rio. Malik Zaire is a very good quarterback, okay? And up until his leg injury, when he broke his leg, I would argue he was one of probably the top 10 best quarterbacks in the country last year for the first half of the season or whatever he was when he did. I mean, I showed you the stats. He had a 186 passer rating last year, and he only played half a season, had 4 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, completed 63% of his passes, and then broke his leg and lost his job. So let's just be fair to Malik Zaire here.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I want to go that far, Joey. I mean, the guy has not even thrown for 1,000 yards ever. He's got 816 yards.
He hasn't played a full season. He hasn't.
Well, I know. But I mean, when we say he's the best, one of the top 10 quarterbacks,
he was for the first couple games last year, Bill. Yes, he was in 2015 for the first 4 games or 5 games before he broke his leg. Bill, there were people that were saying that he was a Heisman Trophy contender.
I think we may have said that about Luke Del Rio for the first game or two.
If whoever said that, they deserve to have their Twitter privileges taken away.
Let me do this right now. Let me just say that I think you bring up some good points, especially about what McElwain has done in his first 2 years at Florida with what he had to work with. I think that's an excellent point, and I don't want anybody to misunderstand me. I'm just trying to present the other side of this. I think he's done an excellent job. I think the problem I have is when we say, if he knows that Trask and Franks aren't the guy, how can we fault him for bringing that in? And I agree with you. It is if that is what he thinks, it is the right coach move to make. The question becomes, in that scenario, it's a 2-part question. Number one, what happens when this young man is gone after 1 year? In 2018, you're back to those same guys plus Jake Allen. And number two, what does that say about his ability to recruit a quarterback?
Well, supposedly he feels good about getting a 6 year of eligibility. I heard that he actually was pushing through for a 6 year of eligibility due to medical reasons.
If he doesn't get it.
But if he doesn't, and even if he does, the question remains the same. Who has he evaluated and brought in?
Yeah.
What do you feel if Franks only needs 1 more year? What if you feel that he only needs one? It's basically 1 more year. He'll be a redshirt sophomore, so he'll still have 3 years of eligibility left after this season, Bill. So if you really think that this offense, because you know you're going to lose Scarlett this year, you know you're going to lose Callaway this year, you know you're going to lose Martez Ivy this year, so you're losing some pretty good pieces that you're going to waste, Bill. And I understand why he's doing this, because like I just said, if you feel that you're one decent quarterback away and you feel like Zaire is going to be that guy, then you got to pull the trigger, because you're going to lose your 3 best players on offense this year. You are. And, you know, this is basically probably going to be Florida's best offense since McElwain arrived. I mean, it's just common sense that it would be.
You know,
and the offense is going to have to score points to win games this year. We talked about this. The defense isn't going to be as good. Obviously, the defense is going to be good, but they're not going to be elite and great like they've been the last several seasons. So I completely understand why McElwain would do this, and I'm completely 1,000% behind it. And if Felipe Franks is really that good, you know what? Go and do your job. In the words of Bill Belichick, do your job. Win the job in this fall camp, because if you lose to a guy that just comes in June, you stink. You're a bum.
I mean, yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
Again, though, it almost sounded like you're pointing to this being the year, this third year being the year that they make their title run. And the problem I have with that is that you're still highly dependent on must-champ guys on defense to get that done. And if you're peaking this year and not next year, that means you're peaking before a full cycle of your own recruits are in place to do that. And if you're dependent on those guys that are leaving this year, that could be another indictment on your recruiting. So hopefully that's not the case. And I'm not suggesting that it is the case, but it's something to be aware of. We really need to be pointing to next year as the year and hoping that's the year. So if we're having to cut the loss now and go for broke now in 2017, that could be indicative of yet another problem.
Well, if it's all the juniors that are leaving, those would be McElwain guys.
Yeah, but it's not all juniors. Yes. Remember, you've got some seniors, especially.
I was just talking about the guys Joey brought up.
I'm talking about the best guys on offense.
If it's Callaway's guys, Callaway, Scarlett, Ivy, those 3.
Yeah, and on that side of the ball, I would definitely agree with you. And on defense, you could have Jefferson, who is McElwain's other 5-star. They could both be gone.
I mean, looking at it, I don't think another arm for competition is bad. And I think I said that last week. I mean, I won't slam Mac for not developing a quarterback if Zaire's on the roster. But if he's starting, that part will creep into my mind. But, I mean, Joey brings up a good point. If McElwain really feels we're that close, I mean, maybe Zaire is the missing link there. I still think either way, and we just brought this up, I still think 2018 could be a really good year for Franks. I think we have to remember, and we've heard it a lot, he did not get a lot of coaching, quarterback coaching in high school. So, he's finally getting around to getting that. This is – I'd rather see him play. This is long as he's not flat out terrible. Hopefully he's not. I haven't seen enough of Zaire to get too excited. But that I do remember that LSU game and the bowl game. I take bowl game results with a grain of salt, especially with LSU not playing in a highly, I think it was a Buffalo Wild Wings bowl or something like that. So, but if Zaire does start, I mean, hopefully he's good enough for the Gators to at least finally. Also, I think something else that hurts quarterbacks is Florida doesn't get a lot of blowouts. They don't get blowouts. So if Zaire does come and Florida's blowing out teams, hopefully maybe we finally see Franks and Trask, get some playing time in some blowout situations, some late game situations, to where at least they have some experience moving forward.
Yeah, really at the end of the day, what this is about, it's about fan angst. I freely admit that. I just think we're all so ready as Gator fans to have things back the way they were. We want to see Florida at the top. We want to feel like we're going to go out and smash the Mississippis of the world and go out and win tough games against Florida State. And it just hasn't happened in a while. And that is certainly not the that is not a statue sculpted by Jim McElwain. That's a statue he inherited, and I'm hoping he's smashing it to bits and rebuilding something. And I just feel like this kind of kicks it down the road another year. Maybe it doesn't say anything about his recruiting because, like we said, those young quarterbacks are young quarterbacks, and just like Joey said, they may need another year. It's just really tough to have to wait another year to find out if the long-term solutions are going to work, and I think that's what a lot of fans are frustrated with.
But see, I almost think that Franks was recruited like a basketball player, Bill, when he's drafted in the NBA. He was recruited on potential and his ceiling. And we just don't know how long it's going to take for him to reach his ceiling. And that's the thing with a developmental quarterback like Franks. We knew that he was a developmental project. I mean, it's not a coincidence, Bill, that he threw 3 passes and 3 interceptions in the spring game last year. Spring games are scripted. They are very easy to manage. They are very low hostility. The crowd's in your favor, the whole time. So the fact that he had 3 passes and 3 interceptions, although he was young, he had just come in, is still kind of alarming. I really can honestly say I've never seen a spring game performance of that magnitude before. So, if everything that I'm hearing is true, then I don't really want Franks to start. Obviously, like you said, Bill, for a guy that we recruit, we're used to the Chris Leaks and the Tim Tebows, and we recruit these guys, the Rex Grossmans, these guys that we recruited and that we watch them grow up into their own and become, ridiculously good quarterbacks. And if that's not the case with these guys, Bill, I would rather take my chances with somebody that has experience and that I've seen have success. Like that's why we can't compare Appleby and Del Rio to Zaire, because neither of those guys ever had success on the college football level before. Even though they were transfers, Del Rio never started a game. Appleby was mediocre at best in college. We've seen Zaire have success on the Division I level playing against good quality opponents. So there. And I think that's one thing that people see the grad transfer and they automatically jump to the Del Rios and the Applebys and they get scared. And I think that's something that we need to separate ourselves from with Zaire, because he's not a normal grad transfer. Malik Zaire would start on probably, I'd say 50% of college football programs right now if he walked into the locker room. That's just how the quarterback position is. You're so desperate for a quarterback right now that I believe that 50% of all college programs in the country, D1, would take Malik Zaire and start him. And if Florida's in a position right now, Bill, like we just discussed, to go to the next level offensively, feel that this is the right move. Am I sad about it? Does it kind of bum me out that maybe Franks just isn't going to be the guy? I never really believed the Trask hype. Obviously, I'd hoped that he was going to, improve vastly, but I think Twitter mostly pushed Kyle Trask because, Tease Tabor kind of blew him up in spring practice last year. So, we all had this false hope with Trask. So I'm not even going to go there with him. But Franks, I had high hopes in Franks, and I've blown him up on the show before, hoping that he was the next guy. But there comes a point where you got to really take a step back and say, was it really something that I was just wishful thinking for? Or is it something that I really, truly believed in that was going to happen? And maybe it was more wishful thinking, Bill, for all of us about Franks. And rather win with Zaire and then go down with a sinking ship with Franks just because he's been recruited by us and we all wanted to see him play. Do you get what I'm saying?
I think Franks could come out and be the guy this year, so who knows? I mean, and that's the great thing about this is we need to make sure we clarify we're not writing any of these kids off.
No.
It's
And what we've done, Zaire's going to be allowed to come to Florida. We don't even know that yet.
Yeah, and what we've done here is kind of, and we all three kind of did it, is we presented, I think, both sides and did it pretty well there. So,
I think we can all agree we are for the best quarterback now to start this year. Everything else can wait till
Zaire comes in. You know what, Felipe Franks, if you're the best quarterback on the roster, you better be the starter day one.
There we go. You guys ready to move on to some spring ball?
Heck yeah, man.
All right, we're in the last week of spring ball right now with the Orange and Blue debut on Friday night at 7:30. So we get to see our first extended look at these 2017 Gators. I think there will be many things we'll be looking for. But we're going to pinpoint some areas and some players that we want to see in the spring game, and some that need to have a good showing. Now, I feel like we have to say this again. This isn't the end-all, be-all in determining what's going to happen. But hopefully we can glean something from the game and our outlook on it. So McElwain mentioned in his early week press conference that this game will be pretty vanilla into not show Michigan too much in preparing for the opener. And also mentions there's some separation at quarterback. So more than likely that means Franks is separating himself from the rest of the guys, mainly Kyle Trask there. So Joey and Bill, I'll start with you guys, and then I'll jump in. Joey, who's the one player on both sides of the ball, and not necessarily a quarterback, of course, that we think needs a good showing Friday night?
Well, first I want to say Gonzaga's beating UNC right now, which is pretty awesome. But I think that, I mean, like you said, it's going to be scripted. It's very vanilla. So I want to see the defense play well. I want to see the corners. I want to see what Duke Dawson and Chauncey Gardner do on the corners. And, we know the offense is basically just going to be what they want to show us. I want to see what the defense does. I want to see how Randy Shannon has changed this defense up a little bit. And I want to see what these corners are going to do, keeping up with, which possibly could be 2 first-round picks in Antonio Callaway and Tyree Cleveland. So, I want to see what these guys do against both those receivers on Friday night. And that's what I'm really looking forward to, and obviously the safeties as well.
What about you, Bill?
Well, when you talk about, I've got a couple things I'm looking for, but when you talk about an individual player, it's Voshon Joseph. And I'll tell you why. That's probably going to be your weak side linebacker this year when David Reese gets back to play the mic. He's missing spring right now. We've lost Gerard Davis, lost Alex Anzalone. You've got 2 high-level draft picks leaving the linebacking core. And as much as people have talked about the secondary and they talked about edge rush and they've talked about defensive tackle, that linebacking core is not only losing 2 absolutely great players, great Gators out of there that stabilized it for the last few years, but you're also putting an additional one on the field this year as we shift to more of a 4-3 look. At least we suspect. We think Randy Shannon's going to play more of that 4-3 man under, a little less nickel. I'm sure there'll be multiple, but if you got those 3 guys on the field, they've got to have some guys step up. Reese did that last year. In spots, they all did, all these youngsters. But Reese was 5th on the team in tackles when he filled in, made a tremendous impact. And Voshon Joseph did as well, but he only did it really for one moment in one other game. He was the one that made the big goal line hit against LSU that may have been the play of the year. But that was like one of 2 tackles I think he had in that game. The kid is young. The kid was an unheralded recruit. He's being talked about as the Randy Shannon special kid. I think Alabama may have made a late play for him, but the kid only had 13 tackles all year. Had a few in the second half, and then he had like half his tackles came in the bowl game against Iowa. He's a kid that looks like he has a lot of athleticism, but he needs to step up as we go into this offseason. Have a big spring game and show that somebody that's healthy right now can give them confidence, and not only Shannon's scheme change to that 4-3 and that new linebacking core, but show us that we've got the youngsters on the roster that can step up for that position. He is the guy. Now, I know Kylan Johnson went wild last year in the spring game.
You read my mind. Yeah, him almost at the same position in the spring game last year. Johnson went crazy.
That's right. That's right. And he was a guy that, he had a good season in a backup role last year. He was 10th on the team at tackles. I think he's a little bit better at coverage than he is at really the run fits at this point, and that's something he's got to get better at. But with him, we know we've got a guy that even if he helps you a little more in coverage, he's going to help you. But we don't know if Voshon Joseph is going to turn that corner. And we need a guy at linebacker to take us into the summertime saying, you know what, Randy's guys are going to be okay. He's my guy. I want to see him blow up.
Yeah, I like that. I'll move back to the offensive side for a second. Running back Mark Thompson. I kind of want to see, he was kind of – you go back a year ago, he was kind of the guy we were all really looking forward to from his size and when he was brought in as a junior college transfer that we just got, kind of excited about. Last year, 68 attempts, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns. His longest run was 36 yards. Kind of a disappointing year when all was said and done. He had 4 catches for 105 yards and 1 touchdown. I think we all remember that screen pass that went for 85 yards against Iowa in the bowl game. But he had a good spring game last year. We had that 26-yard counter run where he made a one defender miss and was off to the races for a touchdown. It was kind of, that kind of set the tone when we were kind of got all excited. He did fumble also in the spring game, and we heard that was going to be a problem. But 186 of his 299 yards came in the month of September last year. And then the running back rotation was shortened to mostly Scarlett and Pirine. Didn't see much of Mark Thompson, mostly the second half, actually starting in October. So we know his biggest problem is fumbling the ball, and I think that's why he didn't see the field a lot. He has some adjusting to do to be a running back in the SEC. I think fast forward to this year, and I'm hearing he's putting together another good spring. And I don't think he'll be overtaking Scarlett by any means. And I think if we saw that video of you could barely see Scarlett, but there was a video of the scrimmage somehow that got out of Scarlett busting like a 75-yard run. So Scarlett's having a great spring, and I don't think Thompson will overtake him by any means. But I don't look for Scarlett to get a lot of playing time Friday night. You want to keep him healthy. So Mark Thompson's, to me, that running back that could come in, get a lot of the carries. He could be a reliable back. And when the season starts, be another reliable back, another weapon in late game situations with his size at 6'2", 237. And I think he can be another aspect if he can live up to the billing that we gave him last spring of helping this Florida offense turn around.
Yeah, going to the running back position, David, kind of continuing on what you're saying, I almost feel bad for these two running backs coming in, Malik Davis and Adarius Lemons, because I think they're both terrific running backs. Yeah. And they're just buried on the depth chart going into the season. And it's kind of sad because I believe that LaMichael Pirine has the potential to be that next Todd Gurley type. I'm not saying he's going to be Todd Gurley, but type. Todd Gurley had 2 SEC offers, Bill, Tennessee and Georgia. Those are the only 2 offers in the Southeastern Conference that Todd Gurley had out of high school in North Carolina. And LaMichael Pirine kind of fits that mold to me, like kind of, went under the radar in Alabama. And, he wasn't very highly sought after, but I think his talent, Bill, could almost be a 5-star type talent. I mean, we watched him as a true freshman last year in the Southeastern Conference, look like an SEC back as an 18-year-old freshman. And if it weren't for Scarlett being so successful last year and obviously him being the guy this year, I believe that LaMichael Pirine would be the feature back for Florida this coming year. And I believe he had 1,000-yard potential if he was the guy.
Yeah, I believe it was Warren Sapp that tweeted out at some point last year that he looked like he had Emmitt Smith's feet. And I mean, that was high praise from a guy that would know, about running backs. Pirine definitely has some serious potential, and it looks like they found one that went under the radar a little bit. But he's going to have to prove that he can be the guy instead of one of the guys, and so his chance is coming. I mean, because like you said, Scarlett will probably be gone, and he's going to be center stage in 2018.
Bill, I think you're going to get to something for the offensive line, right? But before you do, I want to hit something. I think we really want to see the offensive line in the trenches, play with some fire. We keep hearing that word. We talked about it last week. So this is our first chance to see those guys as a unit. I'm hearing good things about those, and the running backs are having some huge holes to run through. So this spring, is that a sign of the defensive line? I don't know. But with that, I'll go to – I want to see Jabari Zuniga also, have a good game. I want to see him dominate more than the UMasses and North Texas of the world, where he racked up a lot of his stats last year. So, I mean, he had a good game against Georgia where he had, 3 of his tackles for loss. He had 8.5 on the year, but 2 of those were against UMass, the other 2 against North Texas, and 1 against Vanderbilt before, like I said, he got more in the Georgia game. So, I want to see Jabari Zuniga, against a good – and maybe he's matched up against Martez Ivey, Jawan Taylor. We know there's some good tackles there. See Zuniga, get some fire, get in the backfield. Because I think Florida, we really still need to see that one artist at pass rush.
Man, they need an edge rush in the worst way. And I don't care who it is, whether it be Cavanis Davis, I don't care if it's Zuniga, I don't care if it's Jefferson. Somebody has to step up and be the guy that can come off the edge and, make quarterbacks think about him rather than reading the progressions. They've got to have it. They got to have it in the scheme that we're shifting to, or we think we're going to shift to. It's something that hasn't been there a whole lot. We've, get really good run defense with Sherritt setting the edge. A couple of the guys have set the edge pretty well. Zuniga not being one of them necessarily, but they've got to have some monsters coming off that end. We haven't had it in a while.
I think so. Bill, did you have some stuff on the offensive line, or did I make that up?
No, you didn't. So, Joey actually got me thinking. We talked a little bit last week. I know we went over at length on the offensive line, and I'm not going to make this a big, long thing, but there's something that I had to share. We kind of talked about, pro players, coming off that line and the success that we had under Muschamp with recruiting offensive line or lack thereof. I started digging in, and I've got a lot of offensive line stats back to 2006, and I started looking at things like each year, how many players left for the NFL off an offensive line each year, how many total future NFLers. Maybe they didn't leave that year, but they ended up in the NFL. What were the average years in the program for each offensive lineman, like a 1 to 5 rating system, with 1 being a true freshman, 5 being a redshirt senior? How many returning starters did they have? And then I started comparing all these things, and there's star averages to total sacks allowed, sacks allowed rank, total offense, red zone. And I noticed something very intriguing. And it's kind of hard to go just year-by-year comparison because, when you had 2006 to 2009, you did have Harvin and Leak and Tebow and some of these guys behind this offensive line. And you certainly can't compare that to an offensive line that had John Brantley or Jeff Driscoll. But there was one year that popped off the page. In a post-Tebow era, when you had red zone offenses ranking 126, 124, 119, and you have total offenses, 105, 103, 113, 111, 116. This 2014 season stood out to me. They had 4 players leave that year for the NFL. They had 3.8 years average, so almost a true senior average or a redshirt junior average, and almost a 4-star ranking. Even in the depths of the Muschamp era, that offense had the 11th best red zone offense in the country and the 41st rushing yard offense in the country, and only allowed 17 sacks all year, which was 23rd best.
What year was that?
That was 2014.
Okay.
That's the year you lost like Trenton Brown and
his last year.
Max Garcia. Yeah, that's right, his last year. And I thought that was really odd. And so I did some comparison to what we've got coming back this year. And there was this really weird stat. When you go back all the way to 2006, you never had more than 3 starters returning on the offensive line. And really that's healthy. You don't want to go vacillating back and forth between replacing your whole line and having them all coming back. You want that few guys a year leaving. Well, this is the first time in 2017, if you count TJ McCoy as a returning starter, and I think that's fair to do so, you've got 1 McCoy, you've got 1 in Ivy, 1 in Jawan Taylor, and then 1 of Jordan, who has started quality minutes, or Johnson is going to start one of those guards. That's 4 returning starters. But at the same time, the average years in the program, going back to 2006, had only been – the lowest was 3.4 on average a year until last year, and it was a flat 2. The average guy on the offensive line last year was a true sophomore across the board, and this year it is only rising to a 2.6. So this is the second youngest offensive line since Tebow was here, but at the same time, they've got more returning back than any of those lines at all. And to have that cross pass is fascinating.
I would like to think that's a good combo.
Well, I'll tell you this. Maybe they take their lumps this year, but in 2018, you might replace Ivy, but you're going to have probably another 4 guys coming back.
Yeah.
This offensive line is building towards something. I think it's going to be something special. Now, maybe that doesn't come to full fruition this year, but I want to see in this spring game, and this gets me freaking fired up, if you want to play offensive line at the University of Florida, we don't want an old man for coach anymore. Come off the ball, fire off, get underneath the defensive tackle and move in 3 yards and get your feet in the end zone and score in the red zone. I've had enough of having to come out against Jacksonville State on 3rd and 1 and they get bowed up like Pee Wee football. Fire off the football. I am sick of it, and I believe they're hearing the same thing from their new coach, and I think we're going to see it happen in this game. I know what the way it works with spring football. I know one thing that's good on one side of the ball questions the other. We'll worry about defensive tackle later. I want them laid out there like dead roaches, and I want you falling on top of them. It's time to offensive line play to return to Florida football. Okay, I've said my piece.
Don't discount you talked about the starters returning, Bill. Don't discount the depth. I mean, you got Richard Disser-Jones, you got Kavaris Harkless. I mean, you got, guys, Tyler Jordan, you got depth too. Line that we haven't seen in years, which is, I think, is the most important thing that we're not really talking about, because like David brought up last week, don't forget we had 6 healthy offensive linemen in the spring game last year.
2 years ago,
So 2 years ago. So, I mean, the depth alone to me is just so important on the offensive line, because the offensive line position in the SEC is probably the most strenuous on your body. A lot of injuries, guys falling at your ankles. It's just a very hard position to stay healthy at, considering, how many snaps these guys really play. And obviously they're rotating out, but offensive line isn't like defensive line where you can constantly rotate and still produce at a high level. Your offensive line has to stay on the field for you to produce at a high level, because, offensive linemen are like they're very close. They click. They need to feel each other. They need to know where one guy's going to be and another guy's not going to be. So you can't rotate in and out like you can on the defensive line, on the offensive line. So just having the depth, forbid, goes down, that we really need, there's somebody in his place, Bill, that is very, very capable of starting.
Yeah, the only one, Desir-Jones is actually at defensive tackle, but you're right about Harkless. You're right about the three-headed monster they got going at guard.
Desir-Jones,
and Johnson can easily slide out at tackle. Maybe they're not all starter quality, but you've got serviceable backups.
They're good enough.
Yeah, they've got serviceable backups 8 deep now, or close to 8 deep for the first time since probably 2009. So this is going to be a totally different picture than we've seen in a long time, but we've got to see it. They got to move people starting in this spring game. Go into summer with some confidence.
Agree. Joey, I want to hit one more thing before we sign off here, because you brought it up with the cornerbacks and the wide receivers. Chauncey Gardner seems to maybe was off to a little bit of a slow start, trying a new position, of course. Maybe be coming around, kind of hearing he's a high risk, high reward right now at the cornerback position. And I can understand that with if you're on the outside and you're covering Cleveland, Hammond, Callaway, of course. But Joey, do you see Gardner maybe still locking down the other corner spot opposite Duke Dawson, or do you still – I know you're high on some of these freshmen coming in.
Yeah, I mean, from everything that I'm hearing is Chauncey Gardner has that spot locked up. I mean, it's been him and Duke Dawson, and don't sleep on Joseph Putu. He's had an excellent spring, and he's had several interceptions. He looks the part. He's a fast guy. And I'm sure he'll be in the nickel position. He's going to move to what Duke Dawson was, I believe, last year.
Yeah.
The young guys that, like Sean Davis and CJ and all those guys coming in, CJ Henderson and Marco Wilson, all those guys, Brad Stewart, obviously. I could see 1 or 2 of them getting in the rotation. But this defensive back core right now, I think, is pretty set. I think I told you on Twitter that I do believe that CJ Henderson is good enough to where he can play, quality minutes and come in this summer and actually get on the field. I think he's just too talented of a player to not have him on the field. Marco Wilson, I think, is an excellent football player, and I could see him getting some playing time. I think he's definitely going to play special teams too, because he likes to hit. Guy like Brad Stewart, I'm not really sure. We talked about him, but I think he's going to play safety. I think he's just too good of a center fielder. I've seen what he did in high school, and I think that he's a safety that's going to probably be in the rotation as well. I could see a guy like Sean Davis probably redshirting, but these freshmen are going to have to get some playing time, Bill and David, because we really have no other choice.
Yeah, because I think you look at C.J. McWilliams is probably the only other guy I've heard anything out of this spring in a positive way. But Chris Williamson, MacArthur Bennett, those guys they don't show, Friday night's their chance to show something. If they don't show something, and if, I haven't heard much out of spring toward those guys. If we don't see much from them Friday night, then you may be seeing those names you mentioned come in and taking a spot.
what I heard about Chauncey Gardner playing so well, I really thought Joseph Potu was actually going to be a starting corner alongside Duke Dawson.
Yeah.
Because of how good his spring's been. So, and plus he's obviously, we saw him play last year. He played quality minutes last year. So, really, really interesting to see how this defensive backfield is going to shake up. And that's why I put a spotlight on the cornerback position on Friday night, because I really want to see how big the drop off is going to be from obviously, Quincy Wilson and Tease Tabor. And, quick note on Tease, man, it's too bad, that he's had a rough, couple of weeks with workouts, because a lot of money with his, with his workouts. And it's really sad because, you put on his game tape and we know, like he says, just press play, he that's the kind of guy he is. When he gets in between the white lines, he may not be a gym warrior, and a guy in t-shirt and shorts, but you put the pads on and he lights it up.
All right, Bill, anything about the secondary or any other position you want to see something
from?
Well,
the one thing I just don't want to see the wide receivers running wild all over the field. I know they're going to get theirs. We got good receivers there, Callaway and Cleveland and Hammond. I think Hammond and Tony might be in position to really feast in this game because.
But you bring up a good point. You bring up a good point there. You brought up. But go ahead.
It's okay. I just think that you're only going to give Callaway and Cleveland so many touches in this game. And if Tony's not taking snaps as a third quarterback, and I kind of don't think they're going to spend a whole lot of time with him there, if McElwain is willing to show what he's got, you could see he and Hammond, who by all accounts had a great camp, and I think, Joey, you were the one that kind of advocated for that, they could both just pile up yards in this game and hopefully in the season too.
That's what I wanted to – you brought that up, is how much do we – if McElwain made it a point in his press conference not to show Michigan – much, maybe he's playing a little coy, we don't know. It could be a little bit of gamesmanship. It could be, Jim McElwain's dry jokes or whatever. But, if Tony is a weapon, if Tony is a slot weapon that Florida is making a big point to use, Massey as well, if you want to say, how much of that do we actually see Friday night?
Yeah, I don't know. But, you've only got, 5 healthy wide receivers?
Right.
Unless you're planning on running the ball a lot. I don't know. That's why I say I think Hammond could be a guy that really gets a lot of opportunities, a lot of looks. But I think you're going to see some of Tony. I think you do show it. Get it on tape. Because if anything, this team needs confidence. The fans need to rally, and I think that's important. I don't think showing a little bit of Tony is going to undermine your plan for Michigan, especially when Massey may not play. He's been non-contact this spring. You still got him to unleash. And, man, if they can both be good inside slot guys, to put them inside in a 4 wide receiver look with Callaway and Cleveland outside, oof.
Hey, can we just ask for some quality tight end play this year, please? That's all I want. I just want some quality tight end play. I want somebody to be able to catch the ball from the tight end position. Goolsby had some big drop. Goolsby had some huge drops this year, guys, and you saw it. And I just want him to be able to live up to the expectations that we all had for him, because we saw how he did in 2015, and he seriously regressed last year. I don't know if he played injured all year or what, but he really had a rough year this year, and he had a rough year blocking. And many would argue that he was the reason that Del Rio almost tore his knee up. He whiffed on that block on the blind side, and I really want to see him step up this year, Bill.
Yeah, and by all accounts, Kamora Gamble, he's one of these early enrollees. Has had a great camp. Yeah. He came in pretty good size, about 240, can run and block and catch. And I'll tell you,
he's the total package. If he can get his head on, pretty soon for a freshman, I think we might see him a good bit. Since Joey is bringing up how we want to see more from these tight ends and not Lewis or Goolsby, because for whatever reason they dropped off last year, he might can crack that rotation.
Yeah, and I don't care how Lewis is practicing. If he comes out and drops a ball in an early moment of this spring game, I'm telling you, if you leave that door open going into the summertime in a game situation, which this is, it's going to overrule some of those thoughts in McElwain's mind about how whatever he's doing in practice, Gamble's creeping. And Gamble's a guy that could start to take snaps from these guys immediately. And if that's something, like you said, Florida needs that.
One thing about Deontay Lewis I will say is he plays hard. He plays his heart out every single snap, and he will take on any block that you ask him to take on, but he just can't catch.
Yeah,
Apparently,
it is, man. Gamble can.
Apparently, Lewis had some really good catches today in the fastball portion of practice. Two big catches from Frank. So hopefully that can continue. So anything else, guys? A game Friday night. So
hey, we put it out to the fans. One other little thing there. I tweeted out and asked what they wanted to see, and had some really good responses. Brandon Eisenman said he wanted to see Dre Massey get some reps, and of course, we'll have to see how that goes with injury. He's a follower of ours, and thank you for listening. D. Woolbright chimed in. He says he wants to see the quarterbacks be good and a good game plan. Wise Old Guru is another radio guy down in Cordele, Georgia. Again, chimes out quarterbacks and offensive line. It's a common theme. And then one other one, Pigskin Gator says he wants to see improved aggressiveness in the run blocking from no line. I think it's pretty clear from these guys what people want to see here. Move the dadgum football.
They're desperate for points, Bill. These people are hurting, man. This is like the city of Cleveland, but for quarterbacks. It's
Bill,
the city of Cleveland is for quarterbacks too.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's why I went on my little tirade earlier, man. I just
Bill, you did say you didn't.
I actually work with a Browns fan, and I work with a Browns fan, and I told him, I said, man, I feel your pain just in a different way.
Bill, you did mention you didn't want to see wide receivers running around like crazy.
Maybe
that gets fans excited.
Maybe I do want to see that. No, what I meant by that, I don't want to see burnt toast out there in DB. Yeah. Keep up at least. We know Cleveland might have some long catches or whatever, but I don't want to see it 10 yards behind him.
If Cleveland can catch it, that's been his problem this spring. He has been dropping some balls like crazy. From what we're hearing.
He's such a freak, though. He's such a freak.
It doesn't that doesn't scare me much. I think the risk is nowhere near the reward that you get with Cleveland. We saw it in game situations last year where he showed up. It was getting better as the season went on. So Chris Doering will be on the call Friday night, and it looks like we will have him on the show next week. We'll do a show, I think, hopefully Sunday night when I get back in town from a wedding. We'll try and do a show to recap the spring game, and then Chris Doering will join us next week on the show. He'll be in Gainesville for a couple of days. He'll be close to the program, close to the coaches, so we'll get to pick his brain of what he's seeing from Gator Great and SEC Network analyst Chris Doering. So, guys, I can't wait for that one.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. SEC Network analyst, Gator Great, former walk-on turned NFL player, Spurrier era. That's going to be awesome.
A Gainesville resident, Gainesville born and bred. Yep.
There we go. Yeah, so that should be a really, really, really good show. So for Joey and Bill, you can find Joey on Twitter at JoeyV_SEC Sports and Bill on Twitter at RealBSykes. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. This has been a Gators Breakdown episode where we looked at Malik Zaire and if Florida is interested in his services at quarterback, and a little spring game preview where we looked at some players and positions and what we want to see Friday night in the Orange and Blue debut for the Gators. So for Joey and Bill, this is Dave. Thanks for listening to Gators Breakdown.